You're listening to the We're Talking Sports podcast, hosted by Ben Burns and Richie Donnell. Remember to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and visit our website at mysportstop.com. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Ben Burns and Richie Donnell.
All right, so the NBA draft has come and gone now. Interesting.
Yes, it
Yes,
has.
a pretty interesting night, I think.
Yeah, a lot of shockers, I thought, for the most part.
A lot of shockers, yeah, for sure. Really, besides the first two picks, which we kind of saw coming into the draft. Really starting with the number 3 pick, it's just everybody was kind of a big surprise.
Yeah, there were some picks that, made sense, based on where they went, based on, the position that they were and whatnot, kind of like Chris Dunn in Minnesota. Not a lot of people expected Dunn to really hit 5 that high, especially above Hield and Murray. But, the pick ultimately makes sense, even though, some surprises like that, weren't necessarily bad surprises. There were some bad surprises later on, especially for me. But, this draft was probably one of the most interesting moving pieces of drafts that I've ever seen since I've started watching the draft. And the first draft that I ever remember really watching from front to end was LeBron James. So in 13 years, I've never seen a draft that's been this crazy.
So just curious, the first draft you watched was LeBron James. Were you for the Darko pick?
No, absolutely not. I'm a little biased. I'm kind of like the trolls in this situation. Last night we saw Boston make an international pick where the guys booed really, really loudly just because, they don't know who he is. And as Americans, we hate giving things a chance that are different. Something that we haven't seen, we're not going to be like, oh, hey, yeah, we're all optimistic about it. We've never seen you. We don't like you. We don't want to see you. Stay away. So, it just... Darko was kind of the same way for me. I've kind of warmed up to the idea of international draft picks just because of the success that we've seen of some of the international players as of late. And especially, here in Milwaukee, and Giannis has kind of definitely changed my perception a little bit. But there's still too many unknowns for me to really be behind the whole idea of picking an international prospect over somebody that you can just drive down the road here in the United States and watch play.
Absolutely. Do you want to stick on the subject of international players and go right straight to the first international player drafted, Dragan Bender?
Yeah, I kind of saw I think he was. I know that I had him going to 4, just because he's kind of like a complimentary pick to Alex Len. Alex Len can stretch the floor a little bit with a 15-footer jump shot, but Bender will really, really stretch the floor for Phoenix all the way out to the three-point line. But, as the night went on and trades happened, you really started to question as to whether Bender is really going to come over this year immediately, or if they're going to leave him there and let him continue to grow. They made... the comparisons for Schilla really talked about how Bender and Porzingis are different, with Bender being younger, not playing as much, coming from a worse European league than Porzingis did. So really, I don't know if we'll even see Bender this year, to be honest.
Yeah, we were kind of talking about it. It seemed like when he was picked 4th overall, I kind of said, well, yeah, obviously, I think he will come over, kind of like Porzingis did. But I think, as you said, as the night went on, it's kind of like, well, maybe he's gonna stick around in the European League for a while. But I think either way, Dragan Bender, just seeing how Porzingis played, there's certainly some similarities there. I think Phoenix can have a solid stretch 4. A couple years ago, when they had both of the Morris brothers,
right,
they tried to mold them into becoming solid stretch 4s, and it just did not work out. And, Alex Len, yeah, he's a good player. I see him more as a 5, and he certainly cannot stretch the floor like Bender can. So Phoenix ended up getting Marquise Chris later that night, and I think obviously he'll be playing his rookie year unless he gets hurt or something. So they have him. I mean, if they can get Bender too, that's great. But I think they can afford to wait on Bender.
Right. Yeah. I mean, what you were talking about, with the Morris twins, what they were trying to develop them into. I don't want to compare this. I'll explain the comparison in a little bit, but it was almost as if you remember when the Suns really were, one of those dominant teams out west. When Mike D'Antoni was the head coach, and they had players like Steve Nash, Sean Marion, Amari Stoudemire. Amari Stoudemire, at a young age, was able to stretch the floor. He wasn't necessarily a dead-eye shooter from 3, but he could hit 18 feet, 20 feet. He really could open up the floor a little bit as an athletic 5 just because of the style of play that they had.
Yeah.
And Sean Marion was a very good three-point shooter. He wasn't necessarily going to take on any straight-on three-point shooters, but out on the wing and down in the corners, Sean Marion would definitely stretch the floor a little bit as their undersized or small ball power forward, which then kind of has moved the way to the stretch 5s, the stretch 4s, and that's something that I can kind of see them going in the direction of, with Len being able to hit the 15 to 18 foot jumper. Obviously, he's not as explosive as Amari Stoudemire once was, but I agree with you. I think Len is every much a bit of a true 5, whereas Chris can step out to the 3, Bender can step out to 3, but Chris can also defend inside, and it'll be interesting what they do with the 3 of those guys. Because only obviously 2 of them can only play at a time.
Yeah. Okay. So, I want to. What's a draft pick that you were just really for, that you really liked? Give it to me.
I really liked DeJounte Murray to the Spurs.
Okay.
He probably isn't going to play right away. With Tony Parker obviously being there, Manu Ginobili's there. They did sign Danny Green, but whether he stays or goes remains to be seen because he didn't play very well last year. So that 2 spot has always kind of been a revolving door for the Spurs a little bit. And Murray, even though he was a point guard in college, definitely has the size and athletic ability to play off of Tony Parker, where Tony Parker is kind of a more smooth, savvy point guard where he'll take what's given to him. Tony Parker can definitely hit a 3-pointer. He can pull up in mid-range. He can attack the rim. But he is getting older, and they'll ultimately need to refine that replacement, much like they did with LaMarcus Aldridge, going to replace Tim Duncan. They were able to get Kawhi Leonard a few years ago, who's ultimately going to be the wing player of the future, which then replaces, Manu Ginobili. And now I think Murray is just kind of that next guy who's going to step in as a young piece here and ultimately replace Tony Parker. But just his game gives the Spurs something that we really don't see out of them, and that's an attacker who will go to the rim at will, and he will dunk over you if needed, but if you do sag off of him, he has the ability to hit a deep mid-range or even out to the 3-point line. What was your pick that you greatly fell in love with?
Well, I just want to say with Murray, obviously a lot of people are going to say, oh, he's Tony Parker's replacement. Maybe Patty Mills' replacement. Patty Mills has not played as well the past 2 seasons as before. Just food for thought. A pick I really liked, and I guess I didn't realize it until looking at the draft board again today, was the Memphis Grizzlies at 17 picking Wade Baldwin IV. I had him as one of my guys as maybe a top 10 pick, but to me this pick just makes so much sense because Wade Baldwin, he's a guy that can come in and start for you right away. In my opinion, I think he's one of those rookie point guards that can do that. And it turns out he just might have to start for them if they can't re-sign Mike Conley. Mike Conley is going to be heavily teams are gonna go after him. Teams like the Dallas Mavericks and the San Antonio Spurs in their own division. So Wade Baldwin, he's gonna be a really good insurance piece. Now, if they re-sign Mike Conley, it's all the better because the only other point guard they have besides Conley and Baldwin is Jordan Farmar, and Jordan Farmar is not a solid number 2 point guard at all. So getting Wade Baldwin, to me, that was an awesome pick. I really like that.
Yeah, that was also something that I had written down on my sheet here. I just thought Memphis had a really good draft overall and altogether because not only did they get Wade Baldwin, but they got Deontay Davis in the second round as Boston then traded them their picks, which I thought was a great value pick. You're talking about a guy who heading into draft night or heading into workouts was talked about as possibly going as high as number 10 to Milwaukee. And even still being talked about as a top 15 pick despite some character issues that were mentioned, throughout the day and throughout the lead up to the draft. To get him at number 31, Marc Gasol obviously will be there for a little bit. Zach Randolph won't play forever. And, Marc Gasol is obviously their rebounder, their scorer down low. But Deontay Davis brings a whole new dimension to the Grizzlies. Sure. He brings something, athleticism, defense. He's going to be going after the ball. If Jaeger is not their coach anymore, I can't think of. Oh, they got the guy from the Miami.
David Fizdale.
And I think that, and I think with, I don't want to make the comparison quite yet, but if you look at Hassan Whiteside when he came in the league, a lot of people assumed he wasn't ready, and he was very much a similar player to Deontay Davis. And it took Whiteside, a little bit to get adjusted and develop into what he is now, which is possibly a max player. But Deontay Davis is kind of in that similar mode where he's young, he's really raw, but he protects the rim, he'll rebound. His scoring definitely has to come along, but there could be, a similarity there with a head coach that just left Whiteside, now see something that he can mold Deontay Davis into, essentially.
Okay, yeah, very good analysis. Let's go more into the top 10.
Yes.
Yeah. So, let's go right into number 3. Obviously, we knew Ben Simmons was going to Philadelphia. We knew Brandon Ingram was probably going to be picked by the Lakers. Number 3, Boston Celtics. There was a lot of talk about a trade. Maybe with the Bulls, maybe with the Bucks. There were, maybe the Sixers. A lot of teams being talked about, and they decide to kind of surprise everyone. Go Jaylen Brown. Not only that, but they say we're going to keep the pick. What did you think about that?
Yeah, that was. There's obviously a reason that we're watching the draft from our couches or our chairs, or as we were lucky to do from the Bradley Center, and then move over to Major Goolsby's. But they must know something that we don't, and that's why they're in those chairs making those decisions. Jaylen Brown is a good athlete. He obviously has the potential and the room to grow as a bigger 2 guard. Because I believe he's 6'7", 6'8", somewhere in that range of a bigger guard, where he can obviously go up and over smaller defenders. But he's a very poor shooter, and I thought Boston definitely needed help shooting, or they needed a big man to help protect the paint, which they were heavily exposed in the playoffs. And to ultimately look at their draft, I don't know that they really got either one of those things. Ben Bentel's a good shooter, but you're not going to have your 4 or 5, either being Bentel or Kelly Olynyk as your best shooter. Bradley is really, is a really good 2 who I thought Milwaukee should have taken if Boston was going to offer him with the 3 pick. But I don't know how this works. I really don't. Other than they must know something that we don't know.
Yeah, it's you see a lot of teams doing these private workouts with the players, and maybe even working out with some of their current players. So maybe it's just something they saw him fit in the system, and obviously Brad Stevens is a very intelligent coach, and Danny Ainge has made some very good picks in the past. So, like I said, we'll see. Well, definitely.
Yeah, I don't want to say, I don't want to jump the gun here. You know, we have been blessed to see some good coaches throughout our lifetimes. And I like to think that in the time that we have been alive, even though, you know, I guess I have, 4 years on you, but even in the lifetime that, things that you can remember throughout your life, I mean, we've seen some of the greatest coaches, Phil Jackson, now Greg Popovich, have definitely been staples in the coaching industry, business, NBA. But Brad Stevens, I don't want to say that he's Greg Popovich or Phil Jackson, but I think he is kind of the guy who will become that level of a coach in the NBA. Or he's like that next guy that becomes like the face of coaches moving forward.
Okay. No, I agree. All right, let's go 5, 6, and 7. So with the Timberwolves, they had a pretty good. The board really fell down the way they wanted it to. Having Buddy Hield and Jamal Murray on the board right there, kind of surprised everybody. They go Chris Dunn, point guard out of Providence. Now, I mean, granted, he's a very good player, but a lot of people had Hield and Murray above him. What did you think?
Yeah, I think they were above him talent-wise, but I think because Chris Dunn is really a true point guard, this gives them the opportunity to leave Zach LaVine at the 2. A lot of people were talking about, well, LaVine's going to be the guy who pushes Ruby out. He's going to move over to the 1 so they can get a 2. I think they see LaVine as a 2 guard. Now with Tom Thibodeau, obviously we don't know. A lot could change. But I think LaVine ultimately stays at the 2 guard, and Chris Dunn is the guy who pushes Rubio out ultimately, which leads to we have a week until free agency starts, which I think this free agency might just be as crazy as the draft because we have some really big names, a lot of people on the block. We really don't know what's going to happen. But I definitely think that this thing makes sense for them to go with Dunn at the 1 instead of LaVine, which now gives them essentially Dunn, LaVine, Shabazz Muhammad, Gorgui Zdang, and then ultimately they have to figure out maybe another piece because Pekovic isn't going to be there much longer. Or Karl Anthony Towns. I'm sorry, I blanked on that.
You also forgot about Wiggins.
I blanked on that, but and Wiggins. Yeah, I mean they have 7 guys that are really going to be the future of this league at some point. That they could be the team who surprises everybody next year and making the playoff in the West.
I remember I said in a podcast earlier that I like LaVine more as point guard than shooting guard. But I think now that they drafted Chris Dunn, I think I do prefer LaVine at the 2 because having LaVine and Wiggins at your wings, it almost I think it makes your offense a lot more explosive. And I think that's what the Timberwolves are kind of becoming, this explosive, young, energized team, especially now with Karl Anthony Towns. And, maybe if you add Jimmy Butler in there, it's still certainly possible. I mean, this is an interesting team for sure.
Yeah, and I mean, Tom Thibodeau was known in Chicago for his defensive prowess, so to speak, getting guys that were hustle players that would go after it and weren't afraid to commit a hard foul and play tough defense. So, I mean, this is kind of, I guess Minnesota's kind of heading in the opposite way of what we would assume a Tom Thibodeau team to really be or develop into. But it'll be interesting to see, if Tom Thibodeau can really get the X's and O's down with this team and use the athleticism and the youth that they do have to maybe make these guys better defenders, which then can create something similar maybe to a Golden State that's really, really explosive, but can stop teams enough in order to score more points.
Yeah, like I said, I think this is one of the Timberwolves teams. A lot of people talk about the Timberwolves every year kind of being a surprise, up-and-coming team, especially when they had Kevin Love, but now it seems like they are finally, maybe they're making that true. So I'm looking forward to that. Not as a Mavericks fan, but yeah.
But seeing the growth, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely. So we'll go right to number 6. In New Orleans, it was said that if Buddy Hield drops to number 6, they're going after him. And granted, and of course they did. So Buddy Hield appears to be the starting shooting guard now, probably replacing Eric Gordon. What are your thoughts on Buddy joining Anthony Davis?
I think it's a great fit. I mean, Anthony Davis is, to me, might be the best power forward in the league, even though he does play the center quite a bit down there, just because he's such a versatile player where he doesn't need to stay at the 4. He's good enough defensively to move over to the 5 and be able to handle his own. But this kind of gives them they're in a situation now where they have that third piece. Drew Holiday isn't necessarily the point guard that's going to win them a championship, but he's a good enough player where if he does decide to drive an attack, they have Anthony Davis down low for offensive rebounds or, to run a pick and roll with. But if something were to happen when defenses start to collapse, whether it's around Drew Holiday, Tyreke Evans, or Anthony Davis, they'll have Buddy Hield outside waiting, just drooling to hit an open 3. And if they do re-sign Ryan Anderson, I mean that's a deadly shooting combination. If you decide that that's what you're going to go with, Buddy Hield and Ryan Anderson both sitting on the 3-point line, you ultimately have to pick your poison. And a couple years ago, we saw New Orleans make playoffs because of what they were able to do, complementing Anthony Davis. And I think this is a step in the right direction to getting back to where they once were, as long as Anthony Davis is able to stay healthy.
No, yeah, I mean, I love Buddy Hield, and I said in the previous podcast, I think he should go number 3 to Boston, had they, kept the pick, and they did. But I like Buddy Hield. I think you can put him at the 2 or the 3, and then put Tyreke Evans wherever he's not.
Right.
And I mean, like you said, they have Ryan Anderson, they have Quincy Pondexter, Dante Cunningham. They have the pieces now. They just need to figure out where to put them.
Right. Absolutely. I'm gonna ask you this. We talked about this. Is something that we talked about last night. I absolutely love Jamal Murray.
Yeah.
As I told you, this is my favorite player in the draft. I thought that if there was anybody that could surpass the careers of Ben Simmons and Brandon Ingram, that I thought that it was Jamal Murray.
Yep.
And he ultimately ended up at 7 to Denver. Now, the thing that I asked you was, what do? You just drafted Gary Harris 3 years ago. You drafted Manuel Mudiay 2 years ago. You have some young bigs, with Fareed and Josic, and then you have, I know I'm going to butcher his name, but I believe it's like Long VR, who comes off the bench and gives them very solid minutes. But for whatever reason, they believe that Gallinari is the guy to play the 3. I really thought that there was a huge hole here at the small forward position because Gallinari doesn't stay healthy, and he's not the player that he obviously once was. I mean, how do you see them figuring this whole situation out, kind of overloaded at certain positions here?
Well, I think first things first, Moutier's their point guard. He's the point guard of their future. Even if they drafted Jamal Murray, I think Murray is a shooting guard. I said it before, and I think in Denver, it seems as if he will be their starting shooting guard, unless they play Gary Harris and let Jamal Murray kind of figure things out on the bench. But I think he will start at the 2. And then for small forward, if they want to start Gallinari at the small forward, I don't think that's a good idea. I think it's better to maybe make him a 6-man as a power forward. Maybe, he would be a really good complement to Kenneth Fareed's just low post. I think you can put Gallinari at the 3 if you want. Otherwise, they also have Will Barton. Will Barton hasn't been talked about very much, but he's still a solid contributor on the team. But going back to Murray, I like this pick, obviously. This is a huge steal for Denver. I don't know how close Denver is to the playoffs. They are in the West. But Jamal Murray, definitely a hot candidate for Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I agree. So one of the funniest things that I saw last night was a tweet that was made by DeMarcus Cousins.
Yes.
They ultimately made a trade, which I did not understand. But they obviously, we mentioned it before, they traded Marquise Chris to the Phoenix Suns for Poppy from Greece. And DeMarcus Cousins decided that he was going to tweet out, "Lord, give me strength." Obviously, Sacramento made some more moves throughout the night, adding, some other pieces later on. But I mean, this is, to me, despite the headaches, DeMarcus Cousins is the best center in the league. I don't know where you have him among your centers, but he's obviously top 2, top 3 centers in the NBA. What is Sacramento doing? I mean, is this a case where we're going to see them rebuild again because of how many pieces they added last night? Are they going to be players in free agency? I mean, what really are the Kings doing?
Well, they definitely took a step back, I feel like, last night, or they didn't make any step forward at all. And you were kind of saying, I think in order for them to be successful, you got to keep Cousins happy. And getting a guy like Georgios Papagiannis, who may not even come over right away, it's got to be frustrating, especially for Cousins. And then they also traded away one of their best three-point shooters in Bellinelli. Granted, they got a first-round pick for him, so can't be too upset about that. But
right. And I also want to mention that, earlier in the night, kind of before all this went down, you had made a comment to me that Sacramento could be the team to watch out for heading into free agency and possibly next year. And then they went out and did this. I mean, I agree with you with the Bellinelli thing. I thought that we'll get to that in a little bit with who they ended up getting. I think ultimately they ended up on the better side of that, just because of the potential of Malachi Richardson. But if you're gonna win there, I know Boogie may not be able to be necessarily your best player, but you need to be able to surround him with talent. And that's just something that they haven't been able to do. And the talent that they have surrounded him with are other knuckleheads, or those that have had bad situations in the past mentally, like a Rajon Rondo.
Yeah, and I really liked the picking Marquise Chris at number 8, but then of course they later ended up trading him to Phoenix. I think with Marquise Chris, that pick made sense to me because they needed a power forward. Right now they're just a team full of centers, guys. With Cousins, it's Cousins, Cauley Steins, and Kostas Koufos. All of those guys are centers. They needed a stretch 4, and it's not going to be Rudy Gay, because Rudy Gay is very comfortable at the 3. Marquise Chris would have been very good for them, but then they ended up trading away.
Agree. Yeah, I completely agree. Agree with that. So I'm going to give my piece on this next pick.
Okay.
But I did work today, so I have been talking about Thon Maker since 11 o'clock this morning.
All right.
So I am a little tired of it, but I am going to give my piece, and I am going to be quiet.
Okay.
And I am going to let you give your take on it.
Okay.
I think Thon Maker here is the ultimate wild card. We don't really know a lot about him, what he is, what he's going to be, but he has the potential to be the next Giannis. He's very similar to Giannis in his size and structure. When Giannis did come over to the NBA, if Thon Maker can handle the ball, and he can shoot. Apparently, he had a workout with the Knicks where he shot 30 for 40. I was told that was from the 3-point range. I know that they do shoot a lot of threes during the workouts, but 30 for 40 for a center seems quite a bit for me at 75%. But if he did, I mean, that's fantastic, because ultimately he's now Giannis with a jump shot. But obviously 19 years old. If that is what he really is, as the rumors started coming out that he's possibly not even 19 years old. But I mean, he's a really good athlete. This was the ultimate shocker of the draft. I don't think anybody assumed that Thon Maker was going to go in the top 10. I don't know really what Milwaukee has envisioned for the future outside of, unless they're going to play 5 positionless players and just have everybody rotate and be 7 feet tall on the court at the same time. I really don't see how this makes sense. But I guess I'm done with it. I got to move forward, and I got to sell this kid as I continue to work for the Bucks for the rest of the summer and into the season. So, what's your take on it?
All right. See, for Thon Maker reminds me of the guy that in the end, like, it kind of reminded me of a football player that maybe, was famous for, running track and field in the Olympics. Didn't have many experience playing on the football field, but went to the combine, had a blazing 40, and somebody reached up to get him because they got excited about, his speed or his measurables or something like that. That's what Thon Maker reminds me of. I feel like, because of his measurables, because it's so similar, his situation's so similar to Giannis, Milwaukee said, why not have two of these guys? And you can certainly say that's a good thing. Yeah, why not? If Giannis worked out, why can't Thon Maker? He certainly could. But to me, number 10, that's a stretch. When you see some of the guys that passed up, number 11, it was Sabonis. You talked about Sabonis maybe being an option. And he would have certainly, I think, been a more immediate help for them. But I don't know. It's because we don't have any tape on this guy, and
right.
And he has amazing size and stuff, and I really don't know about his jump shots. I can't take the 30 for 40 thing. I can't. Who knows? He could have been wide open there. I think I can make 20 out of 40 wide open. I can't, but I don't know. It's you're taking a chance on a guy. Usually, I think I would be more of a play it safe GM, but
I agree. I was thinking about that as well, and I was thinking this morning, as we were yesterday going to the draft, I was thinking man, I should have put out a mock draft 0.2 or 2.0. But I was thinking about that as well. When I've noticed when I make mock drafts that I'm not necessarily a safe GM, but I do the picks that make sense to me, okay, what I see based on the roster. And I'm not a guy who thinks that should be if a guy is valued at late 20s, early 30s, I'm not going to put him in the 10s, even though we do see that happen both in the NBA and in the NFL where guys get reached on. But yeah, I agree. I don't think that a reach like that really makes sense. The only thing that I did see was I watched the interview with John Hammond and Jason Kidd last night, where they talked about the maturity, I guess, and just the type of person that he is, that he's willing to work. He's a hard worker. He's very coachable and things like that. And they talked about how, for the last couple of years, they've looked at players who have more so of these leadership skills with the willingness to learn and the willingness to put in a hustle and not necessarily take plays off. But I guess this is the type of character that the Bucks have been trying to grab, to build the future. I guess. Yeah.
No. Character is awesome. That's definitely one of my biggest priorities. When looking for a player. But I feel like the Bucks are almost drafting just these big, great guys with great measurables, guys with great size, but they need shooters, and having just Chris Middleton isn't gonna cut it. They got these guys that have really nice size: Giannis, Jabari Parker, John Henson. You could even say Greg Monroe, maybe, and now Thon Maker. But they need guys that can shoot now. And maybe their second round pick guy, I can't remember, the guy from Virginia.
Yes, Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah, a Brogdon might be a good shooter, but really looking at the board, there weren't many good shooters left. Maybe Denzel Valentine, but I think I would have gone differently. Obviously, I think a lot of other people would too.
You bring up Denzel Valentine, and that was actually the next thing that I had written down. Okay. Living in Milwaukee, but also growing up, I've had a number of friends who are Bulls fans, and I texted a buddy of mine asking him what his take was on this, and he was not overly thrilled just because they have Denzel listed as a small forward going into last night. But I think if you watch a lot of college basketball and you watch a lot of Iowa State, Hoiberg loves players like this who are point forwards. And that's kind of what I guess the NBA is kind of going to. You're not seeing as many true point guards. You're seeing more of these combo guards like Russell Westbrook or a point forward, which the Bucks are now expecting of Giannis. Derrick Rose obviously is now gone. With all these moves and the transition here, I mean, what is the future of Chicago? Do they rebuild? Do you think that they're good enough where they'll at least qualify for the playoffs, and with hope that their market allows them to bring in big name free agencies? Or I mean, what can Chicago really do going forward if they're going to continue to pick at 14 and 15 every year?
I mean, I think it depends on whether or not they trade Jimmy Butler, and a lot of people expected him to be gone last night, and he may still go to Minnesota. I'm not sure though, but if they trade Jimmy, they're in obvious rebuild mode. But as long as they have Jimmy Butler, they have a shot at winning. But I mean, trading Derrick Rose, they definitely took a step back. They have they have more role players, guys like Calderon and Robin Lopez now, where there may be more middle of the pack in the Eastern Conference. And with Denzel Valentine, I think he's maybe a guy that can work out 4 or 5 years down the road. But right now, I think he's maybe more of a project for Hoiberg. But honestly, I think as long as they still have Jimmy Butler, they're going to try and make the playoffs.
Okay. I agree with that. Staying in the Central here, a pick that I really liked, and a player who, to some, I should say, might have been, I guess, dropped. But Henry Ellenson to Detroit almost seems like the perfect wedding. The perfect match made in heaven because of what we know about Stan Van Gundy. He likes to have 4 shooters on the court at all times, surrounding a center who can win one-on-one.
Yeah.
And Henry Ellenson ultimately fits that bill. You've I think seen a little bit more Ellison than I have, having lived up, by him.
Yeah.
I mean, what can we expect of Ellenson? I only know what I saw the one season in Marquette. Is he a hard worker? Is this a good fit? What can we expect from him in his rookie year?
See, when I think of Henry Ellenson, the best comparison I can think of is Cody Zeller, except that maybe a thicker Cody Zeller.
What about just to throw a name out there, Hideo Turkoglu maybe?
I think Hito maybe has a little bit more range than Ellenson. And I think I think Ellenson's more athletic than Hito.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I think that's certainly not a bad comparison. Turkoglu, in his days with the Magic, he was a very solid power forward, and I think that's kind of what the Pistons are expecting of him. Their power forward last year was Marcus Morris. Marcus Morris didn't do a bad job. It was probably his best year so far. But now with Ellenson, if you move him to power forward, then you have Tobias Harris at the 3, Caldwell Pope at the 2, Reggie Jackson at the point, and then Stanley Johnson coming off the bench. The Pistons have a very solid team, and they were the 8th seed last year. If Ellenson... I don't think Ellenson is going to start this year. I will go back and say that. I think Marcus Morris is going to start, but I think if they can get good production out of Ellenson, they'll be even higher in the East.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Detroit is kind of, I guess, comparing to, if we're going to compare, I mean, a couple years ago, Atlanta, made the playoffs and they were under 500. And they were going up against, I believe it was the KG, Paul Pierce, Rondo, Boston Celtics. And they took them to a Game 7. And everybody said, watch out for them, next year. and they did. They really made vast improvements, and became a middle of the pack type of team. I see the same thing with Detroit. I think Detroit can win 50 games next year. I think they'll be somewhere between 3 and 6, versus at the bottom of the playoffs. And they really took it to Cleveland, I thought, in the playoffs, despite the fact that they got swept. I thought that they played better than anybody else that Cleveland faced, and played the best against them. And I think that they're a team that could ultimately really push Cleveland as a good, the top team in the East, maybe in 4 years. But Ellenson to me just seemed like the perfect marriage.
Sure. Yeah. And and let's not forget they have a top tier center in Andre Drummond.
Andre Drummond.
Let's not understate that. And I think, if I had to rank Andre Drummond as like in centers in the league, I think I would put him number 3 behind Cousins and Marc Gasol.
Okay. Yeah, I think I can agree with that. I think he's definitely a top 3 center. I guess I didn't think of Marc Gasol right off the top of my head, despite how good he really is. But a player that you don't like that he's very similar to is DeAndre Jordan. With what Jordan does for the Clippers, Andre Drummond, I think, gets a little more opportunity to do what he does versus what's around him versus what DeAndre Jordan has around him. But I think those two are very similar players, and that's kind of, I think, what the future of the center position is heading towards, as half of the league will probably have a center that can shoot threes and block the rim, and the other half is going to have a guy who can't shoot at all but can jump 12 feet in the air and dunk, and put it down.
A lot of these centers now are, you see, they're extending their range, and that's kind of becoming a thing now. Yeah. All right. So what's next on your list?
I really want to talk about how stupid the Charlotte Hornets are.
Okay.
To me. They were a team that I think shocked some people last year with the way that they played in making the playoffs. And they played really, really well late. And they lost in the first round, remind me, correct? Or did they went to 7, I believe, but I can't, with the Heat, I think? And the Heat also ended up winning.
They went to 7 with the Heat.
That's what I thought. Okay. But one of the things that they needed was shooting. Courtney Lee is a free agent, and then they have Nicholas Batum, who will probably play the 3 or a small ball 4, as Zeller and Jefferson will play the 5. And they have Michael Kidd-Gilchrist, who can't seem to stay healthy at all. But their lack of shooting and their lack of play at the 2 guard was something that was really, really desperately needed. And they drafted a player, Malachi Richardson, who fills a need, and they trade him to the Sacramento Kings. I just don't understand how stupid that's really, really dumb.
Yeah, I said it last night when the Hornets were on the clock. I said they need a shooting guard. That is their number 1 need. They have a plethora of small forwards with Batum and Kidd-Gilchrist, and in the front court with Kaminsky and Cody Zeller, they're packed for the future. And same thing with point guard. If they keep Jeremy Lin, that's a good group right there. Malachi Richardson would have been a guy that could have started day 1, and would have been a great player for them for a number of years. But now that they went off and traded for Marco Bellinelli, who's been in the league for about 10 years now, and he's been nothing more than a specialty 3-point shooter, almost a kind of a Jason Capono type of guy. That's about it. Unless Clifford has a really good idea for Marco Bellinelli, and I don't think anybody does at this point. This was a very dumb pick, or dumb trade. Excuse me.
Dumb trade, right? And I think for the Hornets, I would have to think that the only way this trade makes sense, even though I would still take the upside of Malachi Richardson, they're obviously going to be giving a lot of money to Courtney Lee, or at least expecting to, because that's the only other, viable option that they really have right now at that position.
Another thing. I mean, maybe they're getting ready for free agency. Maybe they're gonna show a lot of money to a guy like DeMar DeRozan. Make a surprise here.
Yeah, or Bradley Beal, who's also a free agent as well.
True.
So I mean, we'll see. The next thing I had written down was the Spurs, but obviously, you had asked me for my pick that I thought was the best pick of the night, and it was mine. So I went into that a little bit. But another thing that we talked about as we were leaving Major Goolsby's at the end of the night was how Golden State found a way to have a very good, productive draft.
Yeah.
And could actually end up better with the 2 picks that they made last night versus what we saw out of them last year. And last year they broke the record for most wins in a single season.
Yeah, so with the 30th pick in the draft, they went ahead and picked Damian Jones. And I don't think a lot of people were expecting Damian Jones to drop all the way to 30. And now, I mean, going back to the NBA Finals, Game 7, I think what hurt them a lot was the production of Tristan Thompson. Tristan Thompson went after the boards, did all the dirty work, and at that point, Golden State was like, oh boy, I really wish Andrew Bogut hadn't gotten hurt. Because then they had to put in Festus Ezeli, who just did not play, the way he should have. Neither did Varejao. I don't think anybody was expecting him to play very well. But the small ball just didn't work for them. Now Festus Ezeli is going to be a free agent. And Damian Jones may be an upgrade to Ezeli. I think he will be. What do you think?
Yeah, I think the exact same thing. I did get to see a lot of Damian James in college, just because of the time that I get home from football. The SEC is kind of later in the day as they get a lot of primetime sports, whether it's football or basketball. So Vanderbilt was on TV quite a bit, as they were also expected to be a really, really good team. And Jones, was one of those guys who, he's an older player. And they thought, what can we really get out of him? And I think he's more athletic than people really give him credit for at 7 foot, with a thicker body. I'm not going to say he's Tristan Thompson, but I think he definitely can be better than Ezeli, which now gives them reason not to re-sign him.
Yeah.
So they don't have to worry about matching any restricted free agent contract that he gets. They'll probably. I think they get. I'm not sure exactly how the NBA works with this, but the compensation that they get for restricted free agent, I'm not exactly sure.
I don't believe there is any compensation.
There is no compensation. Okay, so then really there is no impact of them losing him outside of the fact that he really could just develop to be better than Ezeli. I mean, that's ultimately what it comes down to. Mm-hmm. And depending upon which way Golden State decides to go, if they feel that Andrew Bogut, how that knee is going to hold up, is he going to be ready for the first game of the year? If he is ready, how much does he play? Does he come off the bench, or do they feel like with the other four guys that they have, let's just say they re-sign Harrison Barnes, do they go? Does Jones get inserted into the starting lineup as they have Clay, Steph, Draymond, and Harrison, who are all now veterans of this league, that they're able to play a rookie, with these four other guys and allow.
Well, you gotta think Bogut would be above Damian Jones at this point.
Right. Yeah, but if he, I guess speculation, if his knee isn't ready.
Okay.
Okay. And if Jones does play well in the summer league in the preseason, under the impression that Bogut will miss a majority of that preseason time, depending upon how significant this injury is, Jones could really show something here and have the opportunity to surpass Bogut.
Okay.
And be a young player that they decide to use, since they have the opportunity to let him grow and make mistakes on the court versus making him sit and watch.
Yeah. So I think we can both agree Damian Jones was an excellent pick. Let's talk about the Warriors' next pick, who was originally first for the Bucks, Patrick McGaw or McCaw,
Yeah.
a guy,
Yep.
a guy you really like. So I'm gonna call him your guy. This is your guy right here. Talk about your guy and how he can help the Warriors.
Yeah, McCaw brings something a little bit different to the Warriors than what we saw or have seen out of the Warriors. Steph is obviously a very, very deadly shooter, as is Clay. But neither one of those guys hinders. And we saw that in the finals as Kyrie just abused Steph Curry. And J.R. Smith was able to hit some big shots there on Klay Thompson. You know, and those guys aren't necessarily on the court to defend other players. They're on the court to score.
Right.
McCaw brings the other side of that. He is very good in transition. He's a very good defender. You know, he will hit an occasional three. I don't want to say Trevor Ariza, but think something of that mold where he's more so of a wing defender who you can, you know, you're not going to put him on a LeBron James, but when you think about the West, you can probably put him on some of your better guards or shooters. You know, like if they're in a situation where Golden State might be playing the Clippers, you can put McCaw on J.J. Redick. You can put McCaw on a C.J. McCollum. Maybe not somebody of the standard of a Damian Lillard or a Chris Paul, but you know, somebody that can kill you in other facets. You can put him on him, and he can play really good defense, create some turnovers, and it's easy buckets for himself, as he's just a great athlete who likes to get out and run, and that's something different that Golden State, compared to what Golden State has now.
Okay, so and he comes out of UNLV, very good basketball school. Produced some very good, a very good number one overall pick, Larry Johnson.
Yeah. Oh, okay. I was hoping that you weren't trolling Anthony Bennett right there.
Yeah.
But yes, Larry Johnson, without the injuries, was a heck of a ball player.
Yeah.
So you have your big board in front of you, and
It's my big
for
board,
me,
yeah.
I or not your big board, but the board, the draft board.
Draft board,
in
yeah.
front of you, and I have 5 picks that I believe could be the next Draymond Green.
Okay, I'm
or
excited.
Not comparing to Draymond Green.
Right,
the
but
same type of
being a
player.
guy that picked
Yes.
in the second round could
Yes.
end up becoming an all-star.
Yeah. Do you have anything like that? You know, that you said, man, this second round pick is absolute amazing. Watch out for this kid.
Absolutely, I do. Number 33 overall. It was probably a big drop for him. I did not expect him to go this far, but the Clippers, who ended up trading this pick to the New Orleans Pelicans, selected Cheik Diallo. Now, Cheik Diallo, it has him listed here as a center. I see him more as a power forward, but dropped really low. You could say a lot of teams turned the other cheek when it came to him. Yeah, okay, I'm glad you like that. But I think New Orleans is a place where he can maybe, whether he plays power forward or center, work really well opposite of Anthony Davis. To me, this guy, he has a really high motor. A guy that's going to be working really hard to get the boards, you know, and to me, that's what New Orleans needs. They have Omer Sheik, they have Alexis Ajinça, but really most of those two guys really just play and get advantage of their opponents just solely based on their size. I think Cheik Diallo is going to outwork whoever he's going up against, and like I said, that's exactly what the Pelicans need.
Yeah, I completely agree. I also had him down. And the one thing that, you know, the trade that they ended up pulling off, I actually have both those players on my list.
Okay.
But with Diallo, I thought he was a great fit for the Clippers because you said he's listed as a center, but do on the draft board, do they have how tall he is? Because I believe he's an undersized guy. I want to say he's only 6'9", which puts him as a very undersized center. Maybe not so much Charles Barkley.
Yeah, he's 6'9".
But I will say, you know, watching highlights of Charles Barkley, I see maybe not as explosive, but a guy who will play tough. He will play in the paint. He will outwork you, and he's just a bull in a china shop, so to speak, when he's down in the paint because he's so wide and so thick that he has a really good NBA body right now. He just didn't get the opportunity to showcase his talents at the University of Kansas. And when he decided that he was going to go to the NBA draft and started doing private workouts, and he went to the Combine, and he might have been the best player at the Combine. Obviously, we knew Ben Simmons was going number one, but I thought Diallo was a guy who we could see rise into the first round, possibly late lottery, just because of how well he did perform. And whether, for New Orleans, this is an absolute steal, I think. And I think the Clippers pulled the trigger a little too early, and they should have held on to him and traded him for value down the line, as he started to showcase what he really can do. And I thought this could be a great asset for them. But obviously right now, there's, with Ryan Anderson being a free agent, there's a possibility that Cheikh Diallo has an opportunity to play almost immediately in a Pelicans uniform.
Absolutely, and yes, I agree. And maybe this means that they don't re-sign Ryan Anderson.
Yeah, that's possible. I don't think Diallo can stretch the floor.
No, he's not a Ryan Anderson type,
right,
for sure.
Right, but obviously, adding Buddy Hield, I think, allows them to go back to having a natural floor or a natural four, who then will play in the paint opposite of Anthony Davis, who is able to stretch the floor a little bit. So if they want Anthony Davis to play a little more outside, 15 to 18 feet away from the basket, Diallo allows for them to be able to do that.
Well, and speaking of guys who can stretch the floor, I mean, Anthony Davis certainly can.
Right, yeah, absolutely. Another pick that I wanted to bring up that I absolutely love, this is going to be, I don't care if you think it's biased, but I thought Malcolm Brogdon was an absolute great pick for the Bucks in the second round, as the Bucks have needed defense. They have been very, very poor on the defensive end. And Malcolm Brogdon is a two-time ACC Defensive Player of the Year, and he just adds a tenacity and a leadership, and they're already calling him the veteran at 23 years old on a Milwaukee Bucks team that's very, very young. But I think he brings another dimension to and fills a need that the Bucks really need, because they don't really have anybody behind Chris Middleton who's really a true two.
Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a Bucks fan, but I'm a big fan of Rashad Vaughn, and I still think Rashad Vaughn can get on the court and play a lot of minutes. Now, this probably means that OJ Mayo is not coming back, unfortunately, and I know you're really upset about that.
If hosting a party is being upset about OJ leaving town,
you're gonna host a party?
No.
Wow.
That's how
okay.
excited I would be if OJ Mayo was to leave town.
Wow. Okay then. Yeah, I mean, and I don't know if Brogdon's going to be getting a lot of minutes as a second-round pick. I guess we'll see, though. I'm not as nuts about it as you. I don't know. No, a pick I really liked. I'm going even later in the second round. Number 54. This was picked by the Atlanta Hawks, later traded to the Cleveland Cavaliers for only cash consideration, which I thought was nuts. Kay Felder out of Oakland. To me, that was kind of a steal. And to me, I mean, right now, Mo Williams, he has a player option. It sounds like he's going to accept it. But Dellavedova is a restricted free agent. If anybody makes an offer on Dellavedova, he's gone. He's out of Cleveland. Because I think Kay Felder can play minutes right away. Now, maybe not minutes as in, immediate replacement to Kyrie Irving minutes, but certainly, Cleveland up by 20 with 5 minutes to go minutes. And honestly, with a team like the Cavs, that's what gets you on the court, and that's what gets you the attention of Tyronn Lue and LeBron. And if LeBron likes you, you're going to get on the court, and I think Kay Felder is going to be a guy that LeBron is going to really, really, really like.
Yeah, I think he's the difference between him and Dellavedova is more so in the style of play that they have.
Yes.
Felder is definitely more of an attacking, offensive point guard who's going to score the ball, versus Dellavedova, who's definitely was brought on the court to try to play defense. And at one point, they were calling him the guy who could stop Steph Curry, that ultimately did not happen. But they're polar opposites, and it'll be interesting to see what the Cavaliers ultimately do. Just because you do need guys who can come off the bench and play very good defense, and now you're getting rid of one of those guys that kind of has been around for a number of years. So it'll be interesting to see exactly what they do. But I agree. I think Felder is a guy who can get on the court just because of his athletic ability. And maybe like you said, not necessarily minutes to be Kyrie's backup, but I think he's a guy who, maybe 2 years after Williams is gone, could be a six-man. A very good six-man who comes off the bench and gives them another spark, because ultimately whoever is going to be playing against him, he's probably going to be better than.
Yes, for sure. I agree 100%. Who is your next guy on the list? I'm curious.
So before Kay Felder, I mentioned that I had the two guys that were swapped by the Clippers and the Pelicans. And I think for the Clippers, a backup to DeAndre Jordan, Diamond Stone can be a productive player there. He's not as athletic as DeAndre Jordan is, but he's definitely a guy who can see the court. He'll rebound the ball. He's a back-to-the-basket type of guy. And I think that he can get minutes as the number 2 center there, depending on whether they would move Blake to the center or not. But I just think that this is a good fit for him. The number one issue on him was maturity. And I think Doc Rivers is obviously not going to take any nonsense from him, I would hope, with the type of pedigree that he's had. So we'll see, but, just on paper, it seems like a really, really good fit.
Absolutely. And to me, for the Clippers, center was their number one need. You said it was small forward when you asked me who their starting small forward is, and I said it was Luke Richard Mamute. You're like, they need to draft a small forward, but I think with center, besides DeAndre Jordan, you kind of said Blake Griffin. I think Blake Griffin is way better at the 4 than the 5, but besides DeAndre Jordan, their center was Cole Aldrich. And to me, Cole Aldrich is not an NBA player. And I know that's really harsh. To me, I think he's just, I think the best he is an all-star in the D-League. Okay. But I think Diamond Stone, obviously his ceiling is a lot higher. Coming out of high school as one of the best players in the nation, that's what I look at. That's the potential that he has, played for the under 18 team for USA. And he's a winner. I mean, you think about, for those of you that are listening to this that are, obviously local, Dominican high school is an absolute powerhouse in terms of, the state of Wisconsin. They're going for their sixth straight state title this upcoming season. And, he was a member, I believe he won a state title all 4 years. He gets to Maryland, who's expected to be a national championship contender. Yeah. They had a very, up and down season, but at one point were ranked number 1 in the country. So he got to experience some of that high pressure of playing for a team that's expected to win and not expected to lose, like the Clippers are. The Clippers are expected to win. And, injuries have definitely held them back the last couple of years, but he's going to be put in a place where if he does get minutes on the court, he's going to be on ESPN. He's going to be on TNT, where everybody is watching him, and he's used to that, which I think is also another reason that this is a really good fit, because he's not going to necessarily crack under the pressure because he's used to being in these positions where he's expected to win. He's expected to contribute. And if he does become the number 2, that's exactly what's going to be expected of him. And I just want to go back, because when we were talking about the Celtics, you said we're living in a time with a lot of great head coaches.
Yes.
There are some teams with some really good head coaches right now. So just for all the rookies there, if you get drafted by a team like the Clippers or the Spurs or the Celtics or even the Mavericks, I think one thing you need to do as a rookie, SUAL, shut up and listen.
Yeah, absolutely. And, DeJounte Murray, I think, you mentioned the Spurs, so I just want to go there real quick, is in the perfect situation to learn. With Tim Duncan, who's a 5-time NBA champion, multiple-time MVP. Manu Ginobili is arguably one of the best sixth men the NBA has ever seen. So if Murray does come off the bench, he's playing he will be playing next to arguably the best sixth man this game has ever seen, who can, talk to him and say, hey, you may be used to starting, you may be used to being the best player on the floor, but this is how you become productive off the bench. These are the things that we look for. And Tony Parker, obviously being a staple in this league for, a number of years as a point guard, can help him develop his game. And those are the three best guys to have around you. But the Clippers also have the same thing. Whether Paul Pierce comes back or not, Paul Pierce is obviously, if he's a big, I guess, role model, so to speak. He kind of brought guys along in Boston for the longest time, and ultimately before he left, he was a big part of that Rondo situation of trying to develop him into a superstar with KG and Ray Allen. And they also have some other guys. Blake has been in the league for a while. DeAndre has now been in the league for a while. Chris Paul is probably the best, veteran point guard, I guess, or we could say old point guard in the NBA. Not really being the young guy anymore. But as a young center, that's kind of one of the best places that you could end up. And like you said, shut up and listen is a great analogy for them to try to follow.
All right, I think that is a great place to, stop. I mean, and that's how you become the next Draymond Green, okay? Is to shut up and listen, and that's what Draymond Green did. But I think this is a perfect place to talk about really the highlight of the night, which was end up, of course, being the trade of the night that left me just in awe almost, and that is Serge Ibaka going to the Orlando Magic.
Yes.
And not just that, but what OKC got in return.
Yes. This, I don't want to call it, one of the most lopsided trades ever, but when I think of most lopsided trades that I've ever seen, I think of Bartolo Colon being traded from the Cleveland Indians to the Montreal Expos.
Yeah.
And the Indians in return got Cliff Lee, who was a Cy Young contender, if not Cy Young winner.
Mm-hmm.
Brandon Phillips, who's arguably one of the better second basemen that we've ever seen.
Yep.
And one of the best second basemen that I've ever seen in my lifetime. And they got Grady Sizemore, who was a fixture of that organization for a couple of years, who's no longer in the league. But they got a number of big pieces that helped build that organization for the next couple of years, and then they ended up having Cliff Lee, CeCe Sabathia. They ended up making a couple of huge runs in the playoffs before they just dismantled their team. And that's exactly what I think of, because when you get Victor Oladipo, Ersan Ilyasova, and Domantas Sabonis all in return for one player, that tells me one thing. You're going to re-sign Kevin Durant, and you're going for the throat of the Golden State Warriors.
Yeah. Yeah, and and it's funny because we were talking about how the Magic are this team on the rise, and this was before we even realized Oladipo was part of that trade, and and I said, I remember right before I found out that Oladipo was part of the trade, I'm like, I tell you what, Oladipo on this team, he has a higher ceiling than anyone else. Yeah. And just now that he's going to OKC, his ceiling just got a little bit higher. Just a little bit. And, it's so great because now it's almost like it's almost like saying, what if the Thunder kept James Harden? Almost. I feel like and Oladipo certainly is not as good as a shooter as James Harden, but he is just as explosive as him. He can get to the hoop. And you said they're going for the throat of the Warriors. I think they're going for the throat of all 15 teams in the West. Because, 14 teams in the West. This is fantastic for them. And, I mean, you can forget about Ersan Ilyasova. You can cut him for all I care. Getting Oladipo and Sabonis, that's way better than having really an overpaid Serge Ibaka.
Right. Yeah, I think the only thing that could go wrong here is that Oladipo and Sabonis crack under the pressure. Billy Donovan took over this team, and we really expected them to take a step back, after hiring a new coach. Making those types of changes aren't just something that you usually overcome overnight, unless you have one of the greatest players, which they did, but, Kevin Durant was coming off injury. Westbrook was coming off injury. New coach, too many questions, and they went all the way to the Western Conference Finals and took Golden State to the limit. Oladipo has not faced that type of pressure before playing in Orlando. And he's going to be expected to play right away. Like you said, he's probably going to be their starter at the 2 guard. He's not James Harden, but, Billy Donovan will find a way for him to be involved alongside Russell Westbrook. And Sabonis will probably also likely play right away as well, because Adams and Cantor will probably be the 2 starting bigs, and Sabonis will probably rotate in because he has the ability to stretch the floor, and he was probably one of the better rebounders in this draft. So they can bring him along and let him play. He won't need to play major minutes, but he can come off the bench and still make an impact. And if anybody won the NBA draft this year, I think it was definitely the Oklahoma City Thunder.
I think just about everybody would agree with that statement. And I tell you what, I got a new nickname for Victor Oladipo. It's Victor Ola Home Depot, because the Oklahoma City Thunder are building a championship team right now. They're getting the hammer, they're getting the nail, they're aiming right for Steph Curry and Klay Thompson. And I tell you what, this is a fantastic team we're looking at.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think going into next season, I think, whenever Vegas releases their picks or whatever it's going to be, I mean, Cleveland is obviously going to be the favorite in the East, but the difference between Golden State's chances of winning a title and Oklahoma City's chances of winning a title, I think are going to be slim to none, if not graded out as almost the same. I think that is the type of gap that Oklahoma City has closed, because I believe they went to Game 7, the Warriors and the Thunder,
yes.
And ultimately Kevin Durant. I mean, everybody's saying it was just Kevin Durant choking. Durant is at that stage where we kind of saw LeBron all those years ago when he did decide to leave to Miami and ultimately decided that he was going to go for the title. I think the best decision for Durant is to come back, obviously
sure.
In hopes that they re-sign Durant and then re-sign Westbrook the year after. But I think this team is a team, maybe a couple years ago they weren't ready when they faced the Heat. They were a little young, still experiencing the big screen a little bit. I think this team is now ready. Durant knows what needs to be done. Westbrook knows what needs to be done. And I think that with these pieces that they've just added, they now become equal to, if not the favorite, to win the title.
It's hard not to cheer for Kevin Durant, though, really.
I agree.
It's hard not to, and I think a lot of people were rooting for him to eliminate the Thunder Game 7. Unfortunately, they couldn't do it, but they will be a lot more well-equipped coming into this next season.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So is there anything else that stood out for you last night that you want to mention?
I think we really covered everything that I had.
Okay.
I mean, coming up, we had talked about in the near future here, we are definitely going to address the future of free agency.
Yes.
I think what is today, the 24th, so that's about a week and a half.
About a week left, yeah.
Before, next Friday is the start of free agency and summer league. So, I mean, a lot of...
And the Mavericks are playing in both Orlando and Vegas this year. It's huge! Oh, my gosh.
Well, okay, before we do end the show, I got a little take of how upset you were last night, but I'm sure you went and did your homework today. Tell me a little bit about A.J. Hampton.
Okay, the reason I was upset that they drafted him is the second round, the Mavericks always draft a big center. That's their thing. That's their thing. They did it last year. They did it a couple years ago when they drafted Solomon Alibi. Yeah, Yeah, you've never heard of him? Yeah, that's why he sucks. But that is their thing apparently, drafting big centers. But AJ Hammond is I mean, he was the best player at number 46. I really wanted Demetrius Jackson to drop there. Unfortunately, he got picked at 45. But AJ Hammond is as solid as a pick as you can get at 46.
So let me ask you this. I'm trying to find this guy's name here. All right, here we go. So, at pick 46, were you hoping that the Mavericks, instead of picking a player like A.J. Hammond, who you're very likely to see on the roster next year,
Yes.
this guy that Boston drafted, Gurshan Yabusele, we assumed that when this pick was announced that Danny Ainge had fallen asleep and his head just hit the keyboard and accidentally hit enter.
Random
with a
letters.
bunch of random letters. Is that more so what you were hoping for, so you didn't actually have to witness this player in a Mavericks uniform and just hope that you could just get rid of all the depression and just move it on and say, you know what, I don't want to see this pick at 46. Just get him out of here or never bring him over.
I mean, it's either, really either suck in a Mavericks jersey or suck not in a Mavericks jersey. That was Donnie Nelson's choice. So he decided to suck in a Mavericks jersey. So I guess welcome to the team, AJ Hammond.
The worst part about it is the guy that you got at 46. Well, I guess I should say your pick at number 46. The guy that we picked at number 10 might have still been available had we not taken him.
I know.
At number 10.
No, I was saying that. I'm like, okay, one guy that might just drop is Thon Maker. I'm like, I would take him at 46.
So as you were preparing to take Thon Maker at 46, apparently John Hammond and Jason Kidd were prepared to take him at number 10.
Yeah. Funny how things work.
Yeah. So, but yeah, guys, I wanted to say, hey, Summer League's coming up. So it's a pretty exciting time. I really enjoy watching Summer League. So if you guys are able to catch some games, comment on the videos as we post them on social media. Let us know who you think. Who's the guy to watch? Who's the sleeper? Who's the bust? I mean, get involved. Let us know what you guys think. And like I said, coming up on the website, we'll also have a free agency entrance, and we'll probably both also have articles, whether it's on players or teams heading into free agency. And feel free to check them out and get back to us and give us some good stuff that you think is plausible as well.
Yeah, I love Summer League so much. That's not my favorite part of the year, but it's one of the good ones. So, and I especially like watching these. Some of the college stars that maybe didn't have the measurables or didn't have the right shooting form to come out and get signed by one of these Summer League teams and just have a shot at making the team. To me, that's fun. I like that.
Yeah, did you happen to see any of the undrafted players by chance?
I did not.
So, I'm trying to see if there's an updated list here. But some guys have already been signed.
Okay.
I'm not sure if Dallas has signed anybody.
I doubt it.
I'm trying to find it right now. The Rockets made two big moves.
Oh, boy.
They signed Gary Payton II
Okay.
to a 3-year. The first two are guaranteed contracts.
Holy cow!
Which that seems insane. Now you might know a little bit more than me as they're kind of like your direct rival. But did they not do the same thing with Patrick Beverley?
They may have. I feel Patrick Beverley played for his first couple of years. He played just in the D League.
Right.
But I don't know. But the Rockets point guard is a huge need for them because their backup last year was first Ty Lawson, and that was a complete failure. And then it ended up becoming Jason Terry, who is really more of a shooting guard than a point guard.
Right.
So I don't know. Maybe they're expecting big minutes for Payton.
So I have not seen anything in relation to necessarily if there's any updates to this list. This is what Bleacher Report has out for players that have signed. But Alex Poitras from Kentucky has signed with the Orlando Magic.
Okay.
Cat Barber, who I actually had as a sneaky potential first-round pick, as a very athletic, quick point guard from NC State, who went undrafted. He has signed with the New Orleans Pelicans. Daniel House, if any of you had watched the UW Green Bay game where they played Texas A&M, Daniel House was very inefficient in that game and probably had one of his worst games in the tournament there. Very productive player is going to the Wizards. Fred Van Fleet from Wichita State is going to the Toronto Raptors. Gary Payton II, as I mentioned, is going to the Houston Rockets. Isaiah Taylor to the Houston Rockets as well, another point guard. Kyle Wilcher from Gonzaga is also going to the Rockets. Just trying to find some big names here. Rashid Suleiman, who was formerly with Duke, is going to the Chicago Bulls. And here we go. So one of the names that I mentioned to you that I would like for the Bucks to pick in the second round was Robert Carter, the power forward from Maryland, as a rebounder and 15 to 18 foot jump shot power forward. Ends up with the Golden State Warriors, of course. Ryan Arcidiacono, many of you know, is the starting point guard of the Villanova Wildcats, who won the tournament last year. Ended up with the San Antonio Spurs.
Ooh.
And the Big Ten, I think he was a Big Ten Player of the Year, Yogi Ferrell, is with the Brooklyn Nets.
Wow, I'm surprised he didn't end up with the Grizzlies. Make it Yogi Bear.
Yes, the Yogi Bears of Brooklyn.
All right. No, I'm saying he would go to the Grizzlies. Grizzlies are bad.
Oh! You cut out really bad. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
I didn't hear you say the Grizzlies part. All of a sudden, I just heard you say they should just call him the Yogi Bear, and I was like,
they should just call him the Yogi Bear.
Yeah, that would be good. I thought he would be a player that would get drafted, but that's why I'm not an NBA GM apparently.
Well, no, you're not. So let's just cut it out there. Yeah. So if that's it, I think we can call it a podcast.
Yeah. I think we're done.
Yeah. So very, very good show in my opinion.
Yes.
You were kind of cutting out a little bit, like towards when you were talking about Jamal Murray a little bit, Buddy Hield. It was kind of getting a little muffly, but right now you're good. So
okay.
I apologize for anybody that's listening. Had a little bit trouble listening to that part, but
deepest apologies. Hope you can make out what I was saying.
Yeah. Otherwise, just call him and ask. I'm sure he'll be fine.
Not tonight. I'm tired. Call Monday. I work all weekend.
Not tonight. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much for listening. Remember to go on mysportstop.com for any more information. We now have 2 articles up right now about free agency, about what the 76ers should do and what the Lakers should do.
Okay.
So go check that out. Richie, are you planning to post anything?
Yeah, I would like to get something up about maybe the top 10 free agents.
Nice.
Where I think they should go, where they've been rumored to go, because the rumors have obviously already started. And possibly what type of contracts we can see from those players get, and then hopefully obviously just do the top 10, because next week, as I said before, we'll probably have a podcast episode of the preview heading into free agency and the summer league.
I cannot wait for that article. I'm going to be sitting by my laptop and waiting for it to come out. So, all right. So I think we're going to stop. All right.
Yep, yeah.
Thank you guys so much for listening, and be sure to come back soon. All right. Bye.